Today we have a video you don't want to miss. We're diving into two recent cases that have sent shockwaves through the immigration communities. These stories have one alarming thing in common: people being detained simply because of how they look or because they were in the wrong place at the wrong time. With Trump's return to the presidency and his promises of mass raids, is this the new normal? Stick with me as we unpack these stories and what they mean for all of us. Let's start with a shocking example of what many are calling an unjust detention. A U.S. citizen of Latino descent was stopped by authorities just because he looked Latino and he had a Latino-looking passenger in his vehicle. Without giving him a chance to explain, they accused him of transporting undocumented immigrants. Let's watch.
Pues nomás me subieron al camión y ya no hicieron preguntas que si tienes caso o algo, no hacen nada de eso. Nos agarran que sin saber que si ya eso va a pasar, es que uno sale a trabajar y al que ya no regresa con su familia.
¿Cuál fue su delito entonces? ¿Por qué fueron por usted específicamente?
Nada de delito.
¿Cuál es tu temor más grande que tienes en este momento?
El temor es que no me deporten, que me dejan salir aquí para quedarse con la familia.
No, the answer is it is definitely not fair to be stopped, arrested, detained because you look Hispanic, Latino, Black, Indian, brown, yellow, or what have you. Under the law, meaning in the United States, under the Constitution, whether federal or state, every state has their own constitution, you cannot discriminate just based on someone's skin color. You can't pull them over just because they look Hispanic. They may look Hispanic, doesn't mean that they are, and even if they are Hispanic, doesn't mean that they're immigrants. The government needs more than just how someone looks to stop them. And whether you're a U.S. citizen, a lawful permanent resident, or undocumented, you have rights also. This person was treated with the assumption that he was an immigrant. Maybe it's his broken English, maybe it's who was in the vehicle, maybe it's the location of where he was at, but at the end of the day, he was treated differently just because of how he looked or how he sounded. The law protects him from that. It doesn't mean the experience is any more pleasant. Nobody wants to get pulled over, nobody wants to get arrested, nobody wants to be treated differently just because of how they look. That's what happened here, and it wasn't right. It shouldn't happen. But the fact that it did happen, it's an indication of how often this really does occur. Law enforcement might have different goals. So what is the appropriate line? How do we balance security? So in this case, we don't want terrorists, you don't want criminals, you don't want undocumented people in the country versus people's rights. Well, in the United States, that line is pretty clear. In other countries, like Israel, for example, it's not always that clear. But in the United States, for sure, you cannot be treated differently just because of how you look. If you're pulled over, whether you're undocumented or a U.S. citizen, you have the same rights. You have the right to remain silent. You have the right to be free from unreasonable search and seizure. The difference is if you're undocumented, you're vulnerable. Meaning, if the police or immigration learns you're undocumented, you could be detained and arrested. If you're a U.S. citizen, you've got nothing to hide. It doesn't mean you want to share information. It doesn't mean you want to volunteer anything, because then you give up your rights. And who knows, maybe someone left something in your car that you didn't even know about. So don't put yourself in that scenario. But you have the same rights with a U.S. citizen, you're undocumented. Nobody likes to have an interaction with the police when they're driving down the road or in their home. Very few people wake up and they say, oh, I can't wait to get arrested. It just doesn't happen. Now let's look at another jaw-dropping case. This one involves actor Rami Malek, who shared his story about being stopped by police in California. I don't know what's going on in California lately, guys, but officers mistook him for a suspect, saying he matched a description of someone of Latino descent. Remember I just said before, people make assumptions that you are something that you're not? Well, Rami is of Egyptian heritage. The police handled him aggressively before realizing, oops, they screwed up. Let's play the video.
Ramy Malek revealed that he was once racially profiled by the Los Angeles Police Department. I got thrown on the bonnet of an LAPD cop car because someone had robbed a liquor store and stolen a woman's bag. The Oscar winner, 43, recalled in a new interview with The Guardian. They said the thief was of Latin descent and, you fit the description, said Malek. I remember how hot that engine was. They must have been racing over there and it was almost burning my hands. He continued, "My friend, who was Caucasian, was clever enough to go, 'Actually, sir, he's Egyptian, not Latin.' I remember laughing on the cop car, thinking, okay, this is a very precarious situation. I may well be going to jail for something I've not done."
Probably exactly what he did do, meaning complied with officer's request. Now, I didn't see any indication that he exercised his right to remain silent, but from what it says, he wasn't the one that was speaking, someone else said. Now, I didn't hear that he said he's a US citizen or not, because that really wasn't the focus of this. This was law enforcement looking for a criminal, and they stopped everybody that met that restriction. What he could and should have done: why am I being stopped? Have I done something wrong? Am I free to leave? I didn't hear any of those things being asked. If you get pulled over, why am I being pulled over? Who are you? Meaning, if it's a police officer and you have a badge, it's pretty obvious. But what happens if it's an undercover police officer? What happens if it's immigration, ICE, or some other agency? They're supposed to explain who they are. Remember, I'm exercising my right to not answer any questions without my attorney present. I do not consent to a search. 100% he was treated different as a public official. Public officials are always treated differently. Sometimes better, sometimes worse, but definitely not the same. Now, is it because he's a public official? Well, technically, he's a public figure, not a public official. He doesn't work for the government. But because he is well known, and because he's clearly not the person that they're looking for, I'd like to say the end result would have been the same, whether he was a public figure or not. Truth is, we're never going to know. But in my humble opinion, of course he was treated differently. You must know your rights. And you have to prepare. Look, the reality is, given what's coming, there's a strong likelihood that you're going to have some contact with police or immigration officials at some point in the next 4 years. Don't just sit back and hope for the best. Plan for the worst. What's your plan? Well, first you have to know your rights. What can you say and what can't you say? What should you do and how should you do? So remember, right to remain silent and the right to refuse to consent to a search. You don't have to agree that they search your home, your person, or your car. Police, law enforcement may do it anyway. But if they do, they have to follow procedure. Don't do their job for them. Then you have to think about what happens if I'm detained. What happens to my family? If I'm the one that pays the bills and I'm the one that works, what happens with my kids? Who pays the bills? Who is going to be my point of contact if I'm detained? Who am I going to call? Do they have my documents? Do they have my information? Can they get their hands on it? Do I have an attorney I can call in case the worst happens? You got to be prepared. Protect yourself, protect your family through preparation. And then you can hope for the best. Share your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think about these cases? Are we overreacting? Or is there something everyone should be concerned about? Share this video to spread awareness. And remember, our best defense is staying informed. We're in this together.
Hey, did you like the video? I invite you to watch another video where I share more tips on how to protect your reputation as an immigrant. Until next time.